As many people know, the Vorschlaghammer has what is likely the smallest spoiler in the entire game, being significantly undersized for the vehicle. Meanwhile, the Envisage is well known for having the complete opposite, with one of the largest spoilers which surrounds the entire rear end of the car, almost touching the ground. The Comet S2, however, does give the Envisage some tough competition with its Retro SR Mega Wing, which is definitely the tallest spoiler on a conventional vehicle. And there are many unique spoilers within GTA 5, including the cardboard spoiler on the Chevrolet, or some other non-conventional spoilers such as the spare tire on the back of the Sterling GT, the trunk straps on the back of the Vapid Clique, the Zion Classics trunk luggage rack, the skeleton cage on the Apocalypse Bruiser, the Torero's uniquely placed spoiler, no, not that one, the one up at the front. Yeah, that one. Or the fact that Brad's not actually in prison. He's dead. Now, although none of the last few spoilers are conventional, they still do appear under the spoiler category within Los Santos Customs. But that isn't the case for all the vehicles in the game. For example, when you take the Dynasty into Los Santos Customs, you'll actually find roof spoilers under the deflectors category, which does give the Dynasty the same benefit as any spoiler if it had the option. The Future Shock Bruiser is a tad different from the Apocalypse and Nightmare options, because instead of it having a spoiler category, it has a spare wheel section, which adds the same benefit on the same section of the vehicle. It's a similar case for the Arena War Impalers, as only one of these vehicles has the trunk armor options under spoilers rather than under trunks. That being said, this extra weight does assist with the downforce. For more information about the benefits that different spoiler options offer, I'd highly recommend checking out gtacars.net under their spoilers and downforce area, where Bruffy breaks down how these metrics work within the game. Continuing on, there are 4 more vehicles where the spare tire doubles as a spoiler. These vehicles include the Dubsta, as well as the Moonbeam Custom, where the latter comes along with the whole bundle. The Roosevelt Valor is in this section with multiple options, but again benefits from the spare tire, along with the Yugo Classic. Similar to the last few cars, the Patriot Milspec has different options for its tailgate, which appears to be very cosmetic, but does act as a spoiler. The Glendale and Glendale Custom both have trunk modifications that are apparently heavy enough to add to the vehicle's downforce. So whether you want a secondary trunk or a secondary stripe, be sure to change this trunk if you plan on racing with this sedan. The Barrage gains the benefit from adding or changing its rear turret, while the Squatty needs a change added to its rear bodywork, either roll cages, sides, supplies, an over-the-top frame. Any of those options do add downforce. The Camacho and Caracara 4x4 both have very similar upgrades, both seeing benefits when adding a roll cage or box rack option. For any of these trucks, there are plenty of options, so finding one that suits your build shouldn't be too difficult. The Nightmare Slam Van has a spoiler option that was realistically just placed too low with its wheelie bar option. Not only does it keep the vehicle from wheeling too high, but it also helps with its traction. The Monstrosity and the Hellion have quite a bit in common, though for this video they both gain a spoiler benefit from the optional window panels and window plate options, which block out the back and rear windows. So again, like some other options, logically this would be due to the weight that these plates add. Now before we move on to some even weirder and unexplainable spoiler modifications, let's talk about some rare spoiler options and where the information can be found. If you want a full list of vehicles with split spoilers, where the spoiler is on either side of the car but doesn't connect in the middle, check out my 150 rare vehicle modifications video. And if you want a complete list of vehicles with active spoilers that adjust to your driving, check out my 80+ unique vehicle facts you probably didn't know. Moving forward, the Brigham gains a spoiler benefit from any of its roof accessories. With its lights, antennas, sirens, whatever combination you want to put on, it does add to its downforce. The Eudora is very similar, but instead has roof racks available which add the needed weight and benefits to qualify it as a spoiler. Similarly, the Granger 3600 LX also has roof racks which pass for spoilers. As for the Pounder Custom, which is the largest vehicle to have spoiler modifications, the roof has the option to add barbed wire, and is one of only a few vehicles in the entire game with that option. And the only one where it also pretends to be a spoiler, adding downforce to the vehicle. Now, who would expect a car to gain a spoiler benefit from just changing its hood? Well, that's the case for the Brioso 300. Understandably, the Brioso has a rear engine, making the hood the rear bit of the vehicle, which allows it to make a bit more sense logically. However, that doesn't make as much sense with the Fagaloa, since it's actually the car's front visor which adds downforce to the car. Again, holding it in there logically, as this is a front-wheel drive vehicle, and the angled visor would have an effect on the front end of the car. Similarly, the Seminole Frontier's hood deflector does the same thing, though this vehicle is all-wheel drive with only 20% of the power being routed to the front tires, so it doesn't make as much sense as the Fagaloa. However, frontal spoilers aren't unheard of, as previously seen on the Torero, and also seen on the Formula cars in the game. Though, the Toros has a similar feature, as if you change its front bumper, it'll also give this SUV a spoiler-like benefit. Sometimes it's very unfortunate when the modifications required to add downforce and improve performance and handling don't exactly match your stereotypical wing or spoiler design, as it would mean you'd have to change a modification on the car that might not match what you want the car to look like, which sometimes makes you decide between handling and performance and the looks of the vehicle you're driving. Moving on to vehicles that you'd never expect to have spoiler options, we look at the two Vito go-karts. Both the classic and the modern gain downforce and handling abilities from simply changing its engine block, even if it does only appear to change the color of the engine itself. Somehow this does improve the handling of the vehicle, so be sure to just change that when you get the chance. The Virus's spoiler camouflages itself as saddlebags, likely just adding weight and therefore downforce, which is logical at least. Now, there are actually 19 motorbikes with spoiler options, though none of them appear in the shape of a rear wing. The first 8 bikes see the benefit when you change their belt drive covers, and I have no idea how that makes any sense, but who says it has to? Rockstar makes their own rules. These include the Averis, the Chimera, the Rat Bike, the Sanctus, the Wolfsbane, the Zombie Bobber and Zombie Chopper, and the Damon. However, it's probably important to note that the Lost MC version of the Damon doesn't have the option to add a belt drive cover. Instead, you need to add a rear seat modification if you want the perks of a spoiler. I'm not sure why they made these different on the Damon and the Lost MC Damon, but they did. The Reaver has a very similar modification that requires you to add a backrest for the rear seat, which in my opinion makes the bike look less admirable, but might be worth the sacrifice for the extra handling. The Manchez Scout is the only Manchez with a spoiler option. For this, all you need to do is add one of the top box options, such as saddlebags or storage boxes and a jerry can. Just pick one of them, it helps significantly. As for the FCR 1000 Custom, which is one of my favorite bikes, you need to modify the fairing, which does give you a lot of customizability on how you want this bike to look, and any of these options help with the bike's performance. The same can be said for the original Oppressor, which also has fairing options with the same benefit. On a similar note, there are 4 bikes that require headlight modifications, and for most of these, it does just modify the fairing around the headlight, but is categorized under the headlight section instead. These include the Defiler, the Diablos Custom, the S-Key, and the Vortex. The Power Surge requires you to modify the bodywork on the bike itself, though I'm not exactly sure which category this is referring to and couldn't get much more clarity on what exactly it was talking about, so just don't keep anything stock with the bodywork on this bike. And last, and possibly the most illogical of all of them, is the Fagio mod. If you had to take a guess on which modification added the spoiler benefit to this scooter, what would your guesses be? No, it's not the 50 mirrors. It's also not the 40 bajillion headlights. And unlike the other bikes, it's not the belt drive cover, rear seat, or headlight fairing. Instead, if you add any of the front antenna modifications, this bike will receive the downforce adjustment that would normally be given to it if it had a spoiler option. I'm not sure how these antennas would actually do any of that, but apparently they do. So how many of these spoiler adjacent options were you aware of? And which one are you going to be putting on your next vehicle? In the meantime, check out that video because YouTube thinks you'll like it.